My wife is a popular blogger, but I found out about her cheating and took the baby for myself. Now her image of the perfect mother is being questioned. I devised a revenge plan and made. The smell of burnt toast wafted through the kitchen as I grabbed the toaster's handle, muttering under my breath. Great. Just perfect. I dropped the charred bread into the trash and settled for a bagel instead. Melissa breezed past me, phone in hand, her curls bouncing with every step. She barely acknowledged me, her fingers flying across the screen, probably replying to one of her thousands of followers. "Mornin'," I said, spreading cream cheese on the bagel. "You're up early." "Photo shoot day," she said curtly, not even looking up. She was already halfway through the kitchen door when she added, "Don't forget to pick up Lila from daycare today. I've got that dinner with Jessica and the girls." Dinner with the girls. Again. I sighed, watching her disappear into her office, more like her content lair. Through the slightly open door, I could see her setting up ring lights and testing angles on her camera. She looked radiant, effortlessly put together in a way that always made me wonder if she'd been secretly photoshopped in real life. 5 years married. 5 years living in a suburban dream house I couldn't fully call my own because Melissa's followers seemed to think they had a claim on every square inch of our lives. When we met, Melissa was a sweet, ambitious college grad with a small YouTube channel about DIY crafts. I fell in love with her quick wit and infectious energy. Back then, she'd blog about thrift store finds and hand-sewn pillow covers. Now, she was Melissa Carter, the internet's favorite lifestyle guru, with brand deals worth 6 figures and an Instagram feed so meticulously curated it could have been a museum exhibit. And me? I was Ryan, the guy behind the scenes. The supportive husband. The rock. The guy who took the photos, kept the house running, and made sure Melissa had everything she needed to succeed. Except lately, I wasn't sure if she even saw me anymore. Melissa had been distant for months now, but I chalked it up to stress. She was always juggling sponsors, photo shoots, and events. I didn't want to be the needy husband who demanded more when she was clearly chasing her dreams. But then the little things started adding up. She laughed less. Smiled less. Nights we used to spend watching trashy reality shows turned into her retreating into her office with a ton of work to do. One night, I walked into the living room and saw her sitting on the couch, phone in hand. She didn't notice me at first. Her expression was different, soft, almost romantic. "Who's texting you this late?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She startled, locking her screen quickly. "Oh, just Jessica. We're finalizing plans for tomorrow." "Jessica again?" I nodded, forcing a smile. The next day, while cleaning up the kitchen, her laptop chimed with a notification. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something made me glance at the screen. A message preview popped up in the corner. "Derek, can't stop thinking about last night. You looked amazing." I froze, my heart pounding. Derek? Who the hell was Derek? For the rest of the day, I tried to rationalize what I'd seen. Maybe it was a harmless compliment. Maybe Derek was one of her photographer friends and I was reading too much into it. But deep down, I knew better. That night, Melissa was in her office again. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and before I could talk myself out of it, I grabbed it. Locked. Of course. But then I remembered, Lila had been playing with Melissa's phone a few days ago, and Melissa had loudly complained about resetting her password to something simple. Something I might have overheard. I typed in 1111. The screen unlocked. What I saw hit me like a freight train. Dozens of messages between Melissa and someone named Derek. Flirty texts. Late-night photos, nothing too risque, but intimate enough to make my stomach churn. The most damning message read, "Melissa, I hate sneaking around like this. But I can't just leave everything. Not yet." I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I scrolled further, each message stabbing deeper. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional. She was sharing parts of herself with this guy that I hadn't seen in months. The sound of her footsteps snapped me out of it. I quickly locked the phone and placed it back on the counter. "Hey," she said, walking into the kitchen. "You're still up?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something inside me crack. The woman I had built a life with, the mother of my daughter, was living a double life. "Yeah," I said, my voice tight. Couldn't sleep. The next morning, I waited until Lila was at daycare. Melissa was in her office, sipping a latte and humming as she edited photos. I stepped in, my fists clenched at my sides. "We need to talk." She looked up, annoyed. "Can it wait? I'm on a deadline." "No. It can't." I grabbed her laptop, opened it, and pulled up the messages with Derek. I slammed it on the desk in front of her. Melissa's face went pale. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, my voice shaking. She stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Ryan, don't even try to lie," I snapped. "I saw the texts. I saw everything." Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't buying it. "Not this time." "It's not what you think," she said weakly. "Not what I think." I laughed bitterly. "So you weren't sneaking around with some guy behind my back? You weren't planning to leave me?" She didn't respond. Her silence said everything. I felt the anger boiling over, but beneath it was a crushing sadness. "Why, Melissa? After everything I've done for you, for us? Why?" Tears streamed down her face. "I don't know, okay? I felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't breathe anymore." "Trapped?" I repeated, incredulous. "You've been living your dream, Melissa. I've done nothing but support you while you built this whole damn empire." "I didn't ask for that," she screamed, standing up. "I didn't ask you to sacrifice everything for me, Ryan. Maybe I wanted more than just this." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I turned and walked out of the room. I couldn't stand to look at her anymore. As I sat on the couch that night, staring blankly at the TV, one thought kept running through my mind: the life I thought I had was gone. The morning after the confrontation, the house was eerily quiet. Melissa didn't come out of her office, and I didn't bother trying to check on her. I was too busy trying to hold myself together. When I dropped Lila off at daycare, I couldn't even meet her teacher's eyes. The cheerful posters on the walls, the kids chattering away, the moms in their yoga gear, all of it felt suffocating. The happy family facade I'd clung to for years was crumbling, and I couldn't hide it. As I buckled Lila into her car seat, she looked at me with her big brown eyes, so much like Melissa's, and asked, "Daddy, why are you sad?" I froze, my chest tightening. "I'm not sad, sweetheart," I lied, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. "Just tired." She didn't look convinced, but thankfully, she didn't push. By the time I got home, Melissa was gone. Her car was missing, and her laptop was still on the kitchen table, screen black. For a brief second, I thought she'd packed her bags and left, but then I saw her planner open on the counter. 10 a.m., meeting at Indigo Cafe, with Derek. Derek. I felt a surge of rage so intense it almost scared me. I wasn't the kind of guy who did impulsive things. I was calm, methodical. The guy who thought things through. But at that moment, all I wanted was to drive to that cafe and demand answers. Instead, I sat down at her laptop. She hadn't logged out. Her emails, her social media, everything was still open. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the mouse. This wasn't me. I wasn't the kind of person who invaded someone's privacy. But then again, I also wasn't the kind of person whose wife had an affair. I clicked into her emails and searched for Derek. What I found made my blood run cold. Dozens of exchanges. Not just texts, but emails about trips they'd planned, intimate photos, and even mentions of Lila. Derek, I can't wait to meet her. She sounds amazing. Melissa, she'll love you. You're so good with kids. I slammed the laptop shut, breathing heavily. He was planning to meet my daughter. My daughter. Melissa came home around noon, carrying a to-go bag from the cafe. She walked in like nothing had happened, setting the bag on the counter and pulling out a salad. You hungry? She asked casually, avoiding eye contact. I stood up from the couch, my fists clenched. Did you enjoy your meeting with Derek? Her face went pale, and the plastic fork she was holding slipped from her hand, clattering onto the counter. Ryan, I went through your emails, I said, cutting her off. I know everything. Her eyes widened. You had no right, no right. I laughed bitterly. You're seriously going to talk to me about rights? You've been sneaking around with this guy, lying to me, and now you're planning to introduce him to our daughter? She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. Do you even understand what you've done? Do you even care about what this is doing to Lila? Or is she just another prop in your perfect little Instagram life? Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't falling for it this time. I didn't mean for it to get this far, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't know how to stop. You didn't know how to stop. I repeated, incredulous. How about not starting in the first place? She broke down, sobbing into her hands, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no sadness. Just anger. This is over, I said coldly. We're done. And if you think for 1 second that I'm going to let some stranger play daddy to my daughter, you're out of your damn mind. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and tense conversations. Melissa moved into a rental downtown, leaving me and Lila in the house. Her departure felt like a death. I'd walk past her office and half expect to see her there, editing photos or chatting with a sponsor. But the space was empty, and the silence was deafening. Lila had questions, of course. She wanted to know why mommy wasn't coming home, why her things were gone. I tried my best to explain it in a way a 4-year-old could understand, but every answer felt hollow. It didn't take long for the cracks in Melissa's polished image to show. The divorce wasn't public knowledge yet, but her followers started noticing something was off. Her posts became less frequent, and when she did post, the comments were full of speculation. Where's Ryan? Are you okay? You seem different. Why aren't you wearing your wedding ring? I'd be lying if I said I didn't take some satisfaction in watching her struggle. For years, she'd built a brand on perfection, on pretending to have it all together. And now, the facade was crumbling. Things reached a boiling point when an anonymous Instagram account, probably one of her ex-friends, leaked details about the affair. Within hours, Melissa's comment sections were flooded with hate. Cheater. Homewrecker. How could you do this to your family? She tried to play it off, posting a tearful video about missteps and personal growth, but it didn't land. Sponsors started pulling out, and her follower count plummeted. Part of me wanted to feel bad for her. But then I'd think about Derek, about those emails, about how she almost brought him into Lila's life, and any sympathy I might have felt vanished. One night, Melissa called me in tears. They're destroying me, Ryan, she sobbed. I can't even post a picture without getting hate. I've lost 3 sponsors this week. I don't know what to do. I clenched my jaw, gripping the phone tightly. Maybe you should have thought about that before you cheated on me. That's not fair, she said, her voice breaking. You think this is easy for me? I made a mistake, but I'm still Lila's mom. I'm still trying. Trying. I snapped. Trying to do what, Melissa? Rebuild your perfect little life while the rest of us pick up the pieces. She fell silent. Just focus on Lila, I said finally. She's the only thing that matters now. I hung up before she could respond. By the end of the month, the divorce papers were signed. Melissa got shared custody of Lila, though I fought tooth and nail to make sure Derek wasn't allowed anywhere near her. The house felt emptier without her, but in a way, it was freeing. I could breathe again. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. But as I lay in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The storm was far from over. The morning the custody arrangement officially took effect, Melissa showed up at the house at exactly 10 a.m. sharp. Her punctuality wasn't for my benefit, it was for appearances. I knew her. She hated looking unprepared, even if the only audience was me and a sleepy 4-year-old. Lila, she called out brightly, stepping into the foyer as though she still lived here. Her voice had that high-pitched cheeriness that masked tension. Lila came running from the living room, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. She squealed, "Mommy!" and threw herself into Melissa's arms. I stood by the kitchen counter, watching the scene unfold. Lila's laughter, Melissa's forced smile, the weight of the custody schedule sitting on the table. "You're late," I said flatly, even though she wasn't. Melissa glanced at me, her smile tightening. "I'm right on time." We hadn't spoken much since the divorce was finalized. Our communication was reduced to strained texts about drop-offs, pickups, and doctor's appointments. But now, standing in the same room, the hostility crackled like static electricity. "You should get going," she said, turning back to Lila. "Say bye to Daddy." I knelt to hug Lila, kissing the top of her head. "Have fun with Mommy, okay? And don't forget, what are we doing on Saturday?" "Pumpkin patch," she exclaimed, her face lighting up. "That's right," I said, smiling despite the ache in my chest. "I'll see you then." Melissa picked up Lila's bag, slinging it over her shoulder. Without another word, she turned and walked out the door. The public backlash against Melissa had only gotten worse. Every time I opened social media, there was some new drama, leaked DMs, unflattering paparazzi photos, rumors about sponsors dropping her left and right. Melissa tried to spin it, of course. She posted cryptic captions about weathering the storm and rising stronger than ever. But the cracks in her armor were obvious. Her followers, once loyal and adoring, were turning on her. One afternoon, while scrolling through Instagram, I saw a post from one of her former friends, someone named Vanessa. The caption read, "Funny how some people preach about authenticity but can't keep their own lives together. #TBT to when she cared about more than her image." The photo was of Melissa, laughing at some event, looking carefree and happy. The comments were brutal. She cheated on her husband. What a hypocrite. No wonder her brand's falling apart. She's over. By EE. I should have felt satisfied. Melissa had destroyed our marriage, and now her carefully curated life was unraveling. But instead, I felt empty. With Melissa out of the house, I threw myself into work. My startup, which had been a modest success when we were married, was now evolving into something much bigger. The webcam industry wasn't glamorous, but it was lucrative. My platform, CamSphere, was quickly gaining traction. It wasn't just about the money, it was about control. I was building something that was mine, something no one could take away. At first, I kept it quiet. The stigma around adult entertainment wasn't exactly something I wanted tied to my name. But as the platform grew, I stopped caring. I wasn't ashamed of my success. If anything, I was proud of it. One night, while reviewing user analytics, I got a text from Melissa. "Melissa, can we talk?" I stared at the screen, debating whether to respond. Eventually, I typed back, "Me about what?" Her reply came almost immediately, Melissa, I'm struggling. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Melissa looked different, thinner, paler, her hair pulled back into a messy bun. She wore oversized sunglasses, even though we were inside. Thanks for meeting me, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. I folded my arms, keeping my expression neutral. What's this about? She hesitated, fiddling with her straw. I've hit a rough patch. Financially. Professionally. I raised an eyebrow. And this concerns me how? Her jaw tightened, but she forced a smile. Look, I know we're not exactly on good terms, but I thought, maybe you could help me. Help you? I repeated, incredulous. Melissa, you cheated on me. You lied to me for months. And now you want my help. I made a mistake, she said quietly, her voice trembling. I didn't mean to hurt you. Things got out of control. I leaned back, crossing my arms. You didn't mean to hurt me. Melissa, you destroyed our family. You humiliated me. And now you're sitting here asking for a bailout. Her eyes welled up with tears. For a moment, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. I've lost everything, Ryan, she said, her voice breaking. My sponsors, my followers, my reputation. I'm trying to rebuild, but I can't do it alone. And what about Lila? I shot back. While you were busy chasing Derek and your perfect life, she was stuck in the middle of this mess. Melissa flinched, looking down at her lap. I'm not giving you money, I said firmly. But if you're serious about fixing things, start by being a better mom. Lila deserves that much. Melissa's desperation didn't end there. A week later, she showed up unannounced at the house, banging on the door. What the hell are you doing here? I demanded, stepping outside to block her from waking Lila. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice frantic. It's important. Melissa, this isn't the time, I know about your business, she blurted out, cutting me off. I froze. What are you talking about? I asked cautiously. She smirked, a glimmer of her old confidence shining through. CamSphere. The webcam site. I know everything. My stomach dropped. So this is your big comeback? I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Blackmail? She rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. I'm not here to blackmail you. I'm just, concerned. Concerned? I repeated, laughing bitterly. You've got some nerve, Melissa. Ryan, think about Lila, she said, her tone softening. What happens when she finds out her dad runs a site like that? I clenched my fists, my blood boiling. Don't you dare bring Lila into this. You're the one who destroyed our family, not me. She opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't give her the chance. Get off my property, I said coldly. And don't come back unless it's about Lila. Despite my best efforts to shield Lila from the chaos, she wasn't immune to it. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, she asked, why doesn't mommy live with us anymore? My heart sank. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, sweetheart, I said carefully. But mommy and I both love you very much. She frowned, clutching her stuffed rabbit tightly. Do you still love mommy? I hesitated, the weight of her question pressing down on me. I love you, I said finally, kissing her forehead. And that's all that matters. The sound of my phone vibrating on the desk snapped me out of my thoughts. Another payment notification from CamSphere. Business was booming, but success didn't feel as sweet as I'd imagined. I rubbed my temples, staring at the spreadsheets on my screen. The numbers were good, better than good, actually, but they didn't fill the hole Melissa had left. The betrayal still lingered, a constant hum in the back of my mind. When Melissa and I first split, I thought throwing myself into work would help. And it had, to an extent. AmITheA had grown from a modest startup to one of the fastest growing platforms in the adult entertainment industry. I'd hired a team, streamlined the interface, and even started attending industry events to network. But the more successful I became, the more complicated things got. Melissa didn't let up after her surprise visit. A week later, she called me again. "Ryan, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice tense. "We've been over this, Melissa," I said, pinching the bridge of my nose. "I'm not giving you money." "It's not about money," she snapped. "It's about your business." I sighed. "What now?" "There are rumors," she said carefully. "People are talking about AmITheA. If this goes public, it's going to affect Lila." I clenched my jaw, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Are you threatening me?" "No," she said quickly. "I'm just saying. You should think about how this looks. For her. For us. For you, you mean," I shot back. "Don't pretend you're worried about Lila. You're worried about your image." "Ryan, please," she said, her voice softening. "I'm trying to help." I hung up. A month later, I found myself at a glitzy conference in Las Vegas. It was my first major industry event, and I wasn't sure what to expect. The room was packed with CEOs, content creators, and investors, all mingling over cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. I felt out of place at first, but as the night went on, I found my footing. People were curious about AmITheA, impressed by its rapid growth. "Your platform's innovative," one investor told me. "You've tapped into a market that's been underserved for years." "Thanks," I said, shaking his hand. As the night wore on, I started to feel a flicker of pride. I'd built something successful, something that was mine. But the moment was short-lived. Near the end of the evening, I spotted Melissa across the room. She wasn't supposed to be there. "What the hell are you doing here?" I hissed, pulling her aside. She crossed her arms, glaring at me. "Networking." "Melissa, this isn't your world," I said, keeping my voice low. "You don't belong here." She smirked. "Neither do you. But here we are." I clenched my fists, struggling to stay calm. "Leave, Melissa. Now." "Or what?" she challenged, her eyes narrowing. "Or I'll make sure everyone here knows exactly why you're desperate enough to crash this event," I said coldly. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. After the Vegas incident, I decided it was time to set some boundaries. Melissa and I might have been tied together because of Lila, but that didn't mean she could insert herself into my life whenever she wanted. I called her the next morning. "This needs to stop," I said firmly. "What are you talking about?" she asked, feigning innocence. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I said. "Showing up at that event, trying to meddle in my business, none of it's okay." She sighed. "Ryan, I'm just trying to protect Lila." "No, you're trying to protect yourself," I said. "And it's not my job to fix the mess you've made of your life." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, she said, "You're right." I blinked, surprised. "What?" "You're right," she repeated. "I've been a mess since the divorce. I've made mistakes. But I'm trying to do better. For Lila." Her words caught me off guard. For the first time in months, she sounded sincere. "Then focus on her," I said finally. "Be a good mom. That's all that matters." A few weeks later, it was Lila's 5th birthday. Melissa and I agreed to throw a joint party at a local park. It was awkward at first, two separate groups of friends and family, divided by invisible lines. But as the party went on, something shifted. Melissa and I found ourselves working together, helping Lila open presents and cut her cake. For a few hours, it almost felt normal. Thanks for doing this, Melissa said quietly as the party wound down. I nodded. Lila deserves it. She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, it felt genuine. After the party, I started thinking about the future. Melissa and I would never be friends, but we had to find a way to co-parent without tearing each other apart. It wasn't easy, but over the next few months, we started communicating more effectively. There were still arguments, still moments of tension, but we both knew we had to put Lila first. Meanwhile, AmITheA continued to grow. I expanded the platform, adding new features and signing partnerships with major creators. It wasn't the life I'd envisioned, but it was mine. By the time summer rolled around, things between Melissa and me had settled into a strained but functional routine. We exchanged Lila without arguments, mostly stuck to texting for logistics, and avoided each other at school events. But even as life found a semblance of normalcy, the undercurrent of tension remained. We were coexisting, not healing. I should have seen the train wreck coming when I agreed to attend the Austin Women in Media Gala. AmITheA was a sponsor, which meant I had to show up, shake hands, and smile for the cameras. The gala was held at a downtown ballroom, decked out with chandeliers and velvet drapes. Women in elegant dresses sipped champagne while photographers darted around like moths to a flame. I was halfway through a conversation with a tech journalist when I saw her. Melissa. She was standing near the bar, dressed in a sleek red gown that hugged her figure in a way that reminded me why I'd fallen for her in the first place. She was radiant, magnetic, every bit the influencer she once was. For a second, I wondered if she was there by coincidence. But when she turned and locked eyes with me, the slight smirk on her lips told me otherwise. "Excuse me," I muttered to the journalist, making my way toward her. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded as soon as I was close enough. Melissa raised an eyebrow, swirling her drink. "I was invited." "Bullshit," I snapped. "This is my event." "Oh, I didn't realize you owned the Austin media scene now," she said with mock innocence. "Congratulations." "Melissa, I'm not in the mood for your games," I said, my voice low. "Why are you here?" She leaned in, her expression hardening. "I'm here because I've had enough of you painting me as the villain while you play the hero. Do you think I don't know what people are saying about me? The whispers, the stares." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "You brought that on yourself." Her eyes flashed with anger. "And you're perfect, aren't you? Running your little webcam empire while pretending to be a saint." "This isn't the time or place for this," I said through gritted teeth. "Oh, don't worry," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I won't ruin your big night." She downed her drink and walked away, leaving me standing there with my blood boiling. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. Later that evening, as I mingled with a group of investors, Melissa approached the microphone on the stage. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice amplified across the room. "I'd like to take a moment to thank tonight's sponsors, especially AmITheA and its founder, Ryan Carter." My stomach dropped. "As many of you know, Ryan and I share a complicated history," she continued, her smile razor-sharp. "But tonight, I want to celebrate his success. After all, it takes a special kind of man to profit off the vulnerabilities of women." A murmur spread through the crowd. I felt a dozen pairs of eyes on me. "Melissa, don't," I said under my breath, making my way toward the stage. She ignored me, her gaze sweeping the audience. "You see, Ryan's business isn't just about innovation or technology. It's about exploitation. And while I've made mistakes, at least I've never built an empire on the backs of people's pain." "Enough." I snapped, grabbing her arm and pulling her off stage. The room buzzed with whispers as I dragged her into a quiet corner. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I hissed, barely able to contain my rage. "What's wrong with me?" she shot back, yanking her arm free. You've spent months tearing me down, letting everyone think I'm the bad guy. I'm done staying quiet. Quiet? I laughed bitterly. You've done nothing but stir up drama since the day we divorced. And now you're trying to sabotage my business. Sabotage, she repeated, her voice rising. You're the one putting Lila in danger, Ryan. What happens when she finds out what you do? How do you explain that to her? I stared at her, my chest heaving. Don't you dare bring Lila into this. She's already in it. Melissa shouted. We both are. You think you can just separate your business from your personal life? That's not how this works. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The anger, the hurt, the years of resentment, it all hung in the air between us. Get out, I said finally, my voice cold. You've done enough damage. Melissa's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she held her head high as she walked away. The fallout from the gala was immediate. By the next morning, gossip blogs were buzzing with headlines about the confrontation. Exes collide, influencer Melissa Carter slams entrepreneur at gala, scandalous speech, Melissa Carter accuses ex-husband of exploitation. I tried to ignore it, but the damage was done. Investors started pulling out, citing reputational concerns. Even some of the creators on Camsphere questioned whether they wanted to be associated with the platform. I felt like I was back at square one. Everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, was crumbling because of Melissa's reckless vendetta. A few days later, Melissa showed up at the house again. This time, I didn't bother hiding my frustration. What do you want? I asked, crossing my arms. She hesitated, looking unusually vulnerable. I came to apologize. I raised an eyebrow. Really? After the stunt you pulled, you think an apology is enough? She sighed. I messed up, okay. I let my anger get the best of me. But you have to understand. I'm scared, Ryan. Scared for Lila, scared for myself. My career's in ruins, and I don't know how to fix it. I softened slightly but kept my guard up. And that justifies trying to destroy me? No, she admitted. It doesn't. But I didn't know what else to do. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on us. I don't know how we got here, I said finally. But this can't keep happening. If we're going to co-parent, we need to find a way to coexist. For Lila's sake. Melissa nodded, her expression somber. You're right. I'll do better. I promise. The weeks that followed were tense but quieter. Melissa kept her distance, and I focused on salvaging what was left of Camsphere. It wasn't easy, but slowly, I started to rebuild. Lila remained the one bright spot in all the chaos. Every time I saw her smile or heard her laugh, it reminded me why I was fighting so hard. Melissa and I would never be the same, but for Lila's sake, I was willing to try. 3 years later, life looked completely different. Camsphere had not only recovered but thrived, thanks to a rebranding campaign that focused on ethical practices and creator empowerment. I'd expanded the platform into new markets, built partnerships with mainstream companies, and even won an award for innovation in digital entrepreneurship. Lila was now 8, full of energy and curiosity. Her laughter filled the house, and her questions about the world never stopped. She loved gymnastics, her pet goldfish, and Saturday pancake breakfasts. She was the anchor in my life, the constant that kept me grounded. As for Melissa, our relationship had evolved into something resembling mutual respect. We'd stopped fighting, at least as much, and started working together to give Lila the stability she deserved. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, as I was finishing up a report for investors, I received an email from Melissa. Subject: coffee. I frowned, reading the message. Hey Ryan, I know this is out of the blue, but I'd like to meet up. Just the two of us. There's something I want to talk about. Let me know if you're free, ****. I stared at the screen for a long time, debating whether to reply. Melissa and I had only interacted about Lila for years. What could she possibly want to discuss now? Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. Sure. Tomorrow at 10. The next morning, I walked into the same cafe where I'd confronted Melissa about Derek years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. Melissa was already there, sipping a latte and scrolling through her phone. When she saw me, she smiled, genuinely, not the forced influencer smile I'd grown so used to. "Thanks for coming," she said as I sat down. "Sure," I said cautiously. "What's this about?" She took a deep breath, her fingers fiddling with the edge of her cup. "I wanted to apologize. Again. For everything." I blinked, taken aback. "I know I've said it before," she continued, "but I don't think I ever really meant it until now. I was angry and scared, and I took it out on you. I ruined what we had, and I've regretted it every day since." I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. "Why now?" Melissa hesitated, looking down at her hands. "Because I've been doing a lot of soul-searching. Therapy, self-reflection, all that. And I realized I can't move forward without making things right with you." Her words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity. For the first time in years, I saw a version of Melissa that reminded me of the woman I'd fallen in love with, a woman who was flawed but trying her best. "I appreciate that," I said finally. "But you don't owe me anything. We've both made mistakes, and we've both moved on. The only thing that matters now is Lila." Melissa nodded, her eyes glistening. "I know. But I needed to say it anyway." A few weeks later, Melissa published a blog post titled "Rebuilding from the Ashes." In it, she talked about her mistakes, her affair, the divorce, the fallout from her career. She didn't shy away from the ugly details, admitting to her failures and taking full responsibility for the pain she'd caused. The post went viral, earning her praise for her honesty and vulnerability. Sponsors started reaching out again, and her follower count began to climb. But this time, her content was different. It wasn't about perfection or curated moments. It was real. Melissa's redemption story wasn't just about her career, it was about her growth as a person. Over time, Melissa and I settled into a rhythm. We attended Lila's school plays and gymnastics meets together, sitting side by side without the tension that used to hang between us. There were even moments of levity, like when Lila asked us to help her with a science project, and we ended up laughing over our failed attempts to build a volcano. For the first time in years, it felt like we were on the same team. One evening, as I was putting Lila to bed, she handed me a piece of paper she'd drawn on. "What's this?" I asked, holding it up. "It's our family," she said proudly. The drawing showed the three of us, me, Melissa, and Lila, standing under a big yellow sun. "See," she said, pointing at the picture. "We're all together." My throat tightened as I looked at the drawing. It was a child's fantasy, a vision of a family that no longer existed. But to Lila, it was still real. Later that night, I texted Melissa, "Nice job on the blog post." It was brave. Her reply came almost immediately. "Melissa, thanks. And thanks for being patient with me." I stared at the screen, my emotions a mix of gratitude and melancholy. Life didn't magically fix itself after that. Melissa and I still had our moments of disagreement, and the scars of the past didn't disappear overnight. But we found a way to coexist, to support Lila without letting our history define us. Somewhere along the way, I realized I didn't hate Melissa anymore. I didn't love her either, not in the way I once had. But I respected her. And that was enough. As I tucked Lila into bed one night, she looked up at me with her sleepy eyes and said, "Daddy, are you happy?" I smiled, kissing her forehead. Yeah, sweetheart. I am. And for the first time in years, it wasn't a lie.